everyone! Have you ever eaten homemade tamales? If so, know that it is a labor of love. Come along as we learn from our Panamanian church family how tamales are made from scratch here in Panama. Recently, our church was making tamales to raise funds for the children to go to a camp. I had wanted to learn the process of making tamales, so I decided to help out and document the process. When I arrived around 6 in the evening, I had hoped to see the whole process and be home in a couple of hours. Little did I know what was awaiting me. The first step in the process was to get all the corn silk off and cut all the new corn kernels off of the cob. They even roped this gringa into helping make the tamales at various points. For the tamales we made that evening, there were 4 options: old corn, new corn, pork, or chicken. The fire was started and the large pot called a paila was filled with water and set on the fire to start to boil. The whole process of making tamales took place outside. All of the items were ready to go: onions, culantro, peppers, and garlic. The corn was soaked and cooked. Then the grinding started, and the grinding went on for a long time. We were quite thankful for young, strong guys who were able to keep up with all of the grinding. The corn was ground into a paste, or masa. As it started getting darker, it started getting cooler, especially when the breeze would blow. But those guys stayed warm, grinding all that corn.
Todo se tiene que moler. Todo se tiene que moler. Nada más se abre y no hay que limpiarle y ya, porque entre más lo pica, peor queda. ¿En serio? No, no pica.
The garlic had to be peeled, and even a little helper was found to help with this task. Okay. Eventually, all of the items were pressed into the grinder. The peppers, culantro, and garlic all got ground up. The onions were added after that. This was the guiso that would be added to the masa for flavoring. Like I said, there was grinding, and even more grinding of all of the items that were included in the tamales. The chicken was put in the boiling water. Do you know how long it takes to cook 30 chicken breasts in boiling water over an open flame? Let's just say it's a very long time.
Yo creo que esa no hay idea, ya está.
The pork was also cut up, seasoned, and cooked in the water. As it got later, the men's arms started to get tired, and the children were given a chance to do some of the grinding. They absolutely loved it. It was such a fun time to watch them do the grinding of the corn. The chicken was seasoned in the boiling water. We had to work to keep the fire going. As the chicken and pork finished up and cooled, there were plenty of other activities to keep us busy. The plantain and bijao leaves were all washed and set aside to dry. The chicken was cut into pieces, and the last bit of grinding was done by hand. Now it was time to make the filling for the tamales. After the meats cooled, the chicken broth was added to the masa along with the guiso. This was stirred or mashed up by hand. When you're making 200 tamales, you end up with a lot of masa to work with. The stirring took a very long time, working carefully to make sure that each little ball of corn masa was mashed up. The clean bijao leaves had to be cut to the appropriate size. The seasoning or guiso was cooked for a few minutes over the open flame. When the masa was ready, the chicken and pork were cooked, and the leaves were prepared. It was time to make the tamales. Before this, the leaves had been cooked that would wrap around each tamal so that they would be soft. They placed a cooked plantain leaf on top of a large bijao leaf and set it in an assembly line. They then filled up each tamal from there. The masa went in first, then a piece of chicken, and then the guiso or sauce went on top. The first leaf was folded over, and the sides were folded in to envelope each tamal. Then the outer leaf is folded all around to contain the tamal for cooking. At this point, the tamales are passed over to the next station where they are tied with a string. This keeps them from opening up in the final cooking stage.
Sí, porque no con lazo ni nada, sí, cuando se cocen. Fueron a la porra. Así.
The next and last step in the process is putting all of the tamales in the boiling water. They cook for about 50 minutes total. I left around 11:30 p.m. when the first batch of tamales was going into the water to start cooking. When I talked to the family the next day, they said they went to bed at 6 a.m. That is quite a process and labor of love to make tamales. You can see how you unwrap each leaf to expose the tamal inside that you eat. So yummy! Our homeschool group also recently learned the process of making tamales. A Panamanian friend came over to teach the kids each step, but thankfully she had done much of the recipe the day before. It was much of the same process. We began with cutting and washing the leaves before putting them in to boil. Hands were thoroughly scrubbed up to the elbows for each child. Then we learned about the process and all the ingredients that were required to make tamales.
Okay, cilantro, and you can figure that out.
La cebolla,
Cebolla, ajo.
estos son los ingredientes principales de nuestro platillo.
So those are the main ingredients for our tamales.
Ok, con estos ingredientes licuamos y sale esta
So she blends all of them together and it comes to this consistency.
Esto se cocina como más o menos 20 minutos.
You cook them for like 20 minutes. After you blend them, you put it in the pot and cook it for 20 minutes.
No tiene ningún otro condimento, todo es natural.
So it doesn't have anything added, everything is natural.
¿Sí? Aparte de este condimento lo pueden usar con cualquier otra comida.
This one you can use it with any other meal. It doesn't have to be just for tamales. It's a good seasoning.
Does it have salt? ¿Tiene sal?
No, here is coming to the meat part.
Utilizamos pollo.
So we are using chicken for the tamales. Okay, you use corn, like dry corn.
Okay, al final.
Okay.
The masa had been prepared ahead of time. The chicken broth and guiso were added to the masa and the stirring process began. Skipping the grinding process saved a lot of time for these guys.
Es mucha agua.
The main parts the kids had to help with were washing leaves, mixing the masa, putting together each tamal, and then tying them up. The kids did a great job of participating, and each child got to make at least one tamal. At the end, we ended up with a little more than 80, so each person was able to enjoy 1 or 2 tamales. The kids really loved getting to help and being a part of the process, and I was so glad that it didn't take nearly as long.
Maybe not.
Oh, se rompió.
Yeah, I think it's in there.
Like this? No, no, Hay uno lo de cilantro y no sé de solamente eso. What do I do?
Más apretado. Y esta no importa que se rompa, ¿verdad?
As you can see, the process of making tamales is so involved and takes quite a time commitment. I am glad I got to participate in the truly Panamanian event with my church and homeschool groups. The next time you eat a tamal, I hope you remember the amount of time and love that went into making it. Thanks for checking out our video. Be sure to like this video and subscribe. Check out our website at corazondelcielo.com.